9. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
There it is. Justin's on the stick. Soul Asylum's Runaway Train. All right, the jobs numbers for March are out. As Mike Scott reported, 196,000 jobs beat the street estimates of 175,000. So I guess that's encouraging news. But I've got three numbers for our next guest, Scott the Cow Guy Shellady, Fox Business contributor. Three numbers for Scott the Cow Guy Shellady. They are 999. Scott. Herman Cain to the Fed board along with Steve Moore. That's going to become quite a fun place to convene, isn't it?
Yeah, I happen to know Steve. We've been caught in a bunch of green rooms together over the years. But he's a good guy, and I do happen to like Herman Cain as well. But it's interesting to see him, or at least President Trump, put these types of characters on, elevate them to their positions that they're being elevated to, because it might be slightly politicizing things. But I don't know Herman very well at all, but I do think Steve's a good guy, so we'll see.
Yeah,
I hope we're not going to have to relitigate all the whole Sharon Bialik and all those women he allegedly groped. Do you think we're going to have to go through that again, Scott?
Well, no, I don't think so. But the good thing about it is that, I don't know if you saw, it was at the New York Times or somebody put out a headline today saying that, Trump elevates the former pizza man. They refuse to say that he's a very successful small business owner. He's got a lot of history and had been on other Fed boards before.
Yeah, in Kansas City. Right?
Yeah, and they only talk about him being a pizza guy. That's their takeaway. So
yeah,
once again, you're getting the skinny from the New York media. So
right, he was the CEO of Godfather's Pizza, not a delivery person. Yeah, it's a bit of a difference there. It's nice.
Yep.
Boy, in other quarters, that would have racist overtones, since Herman Cain is African American. But I guess if it's a conservative, that doesn't count. You can diminish what he actually accomplished, who he actually is. But I
would say that conservatives won't get their knickers in a bunch because they're too busy being, they're at work, they can't protest. So
yeah, there you go. All right. Well, and plus between Steve Moore and Herman Cain, a little Malachi crunch on Jay Powell make his life a little bit more miserable. That's not a bad thing.
Right. And go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I just wanted to switch gears and get your react to the monthly jobs numbers and what, if anything, were to divine from that against the backdrop of Trump talking possible tariffs against car imports from Mexico, while talking about finally inking a deal with the Chinese on trade in the not-too-distant future.
Well, I'll start with the numbers. Right down the middle of the fairway, this is what the market wanted to see. Not, the Goldilocks report, not too hot, not too cold. This is for further evidence that, the last 2 years, obviously with the Mueller report and things that have been happening in Washington, and with the media beating everybody up about how bad things are and how bad the president is, we've also had the media beating us up about the coming recession, right? It's just around the corner. And after the last 6 weeks of last year, a lot of folks really started to believe that and started to get really scared about what might be happening.
Hey, Scott, we're cutting out a little bit on us.
Oh, can you hear me now?
That's
there
better.
You go.
That's better.
Now you're giving us a college try.
All right, yeah. Okay, so there's an interesting stat that says in any given year there's a 15% chance of a recession. So every year we have the chance of it happening. But after the 6 weeks of last year, we really had the press telling us that, boy, oh boy, the looming slowdown is going to kill us. And there have been reports where the press have said, President Trump's policies are actually killing you. So this type of report puts those things to bed. The world is not ending. Chicken Little doesn't need to call about the sky falling anymore. But it's good to see the economy. We've put the inflation monster to bed as well, too, because we didn't meet our expectations of what these wage rises would be either. So still, Jay Powell and now Herman Cain and Steve Moore, we're going to have this problem about how whatever we're putting into the system, we're not getting out the exhaust end. It's not adding up. We still have a slow leak somewhere because no matter what we try to do to stoke inflation in our economy, we just can't do it. And I think what was very telling was the first time around, 7 or 8 years of 0% interest rates, we couldn't buy inflation with 0% interest rates. So we have a problem still, a little bit of a problem, and we're leaking something and we can't find it. And that's probably the biggest worry right now, which isn't really that big of a worry because things aren't going so well and the unemployment rate still it stayed the same. But I would say if you had to take something away that you had to be a little bit concerned about, is that we can't get any inflation. We can't really stoke inflation, and that's not good. So a little bit of inflation is healthy, and that's been a problem. But other than that, the market's going to like it. It's going to be right down the middle, and it shows that we're on course. We're slower, but we're still growing. So that's okay.
Now, what President Trump yesterday said, he's backing off the shutting down the border now for a year. It used to be a week. He was going to decide now he's going to take a year, make sure that, they do something about protection on the southern side of Mexico's border. But he was talking again about tariffs on automobiles that are coming into this country. Aren't those our automobiles that are coming into the country? Because we have maquiladora plants in Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably more off the cuff than it was planned. But he's got, and to be honest, I've probably been a little slow to realizing this myself. I wasn't quite sure, but now these numbers and these pictures and the media, I think that I like to trust, are telling us that there is a big problem and they have to do something to stop it. And there's been some big studies done to coincide with these jobs numbers, right? That we have 6 million people to fill 7 million jobs and we can't fill them. And a large part of the reason some of these scholars say is that we can't get people to pass drug tests. We have a lot of people that have opioid problems. So funny you mention that because we have apparently an issue with putting these people to work in some of these smaller cities and towns across the U.S. because of the drugs issue. So it's bigger than we all probably thought, and it is actually affecting us month to month with these jobs numbers because we have jobs to be filled and we have people that should be filling them, but they can't because they have problems, which is interesting. So something's got to be done, and we can't continue to keep going down this road like we have been, just like we can't keep, kowtowing to the Chinese and what they've been doing to global trade. So something's got to be done. So, that's an off-the-cuff remark, I'm sure, about the tariffs, but, he's given everybody 12 months to mull it over.
I want to get your reaction to the some housing market data. The median asking price for a U.S. home hit $300,000 for the first time ever in March, according to housing data from Realtor.com. And we've seen year-over-year median list price increase 7% in March, slightly lower than the growth rate of 8% from the same month in 2018. So a hot housing market with a lot of higher-priced houses on the market, and what does that portend with concerns about, blowing up the housing bubble all over again, at least in certain places like, Illinois?
Yeah, well, Illinois is its own test case, and we know that it's difficult to sell a house in Illinois because what your real estate taxes are, and that's not going to go away. That's going to get worse. But I don't know. Part of me, Dan and Amy, part of me surprised that we don't have better housing numbers because we've got a 30-year interest rate of 4.1% for those mortgages, which is insanely low, considering history, which goes back to what I said about some sort of leak in our economic system because we're really not stoking hot housing inflation either with such a low mortgage rate for buyers. So there's something that's just not quite adding up here. $300,000 is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, and things are going in the right direction. Those housing numbers are difficult because I think you're right, they're so spotty. And some places are always good, like Washington D.C. No matter what. And some places ebb and flow. And I've been interested to see because I have a place in Arizona now. Arizona is the beneficiary of how bad it is in California, like Indiana has been the beneficiary of Illinois. So I would say with these big states, the ones that are the electoral states that all the Democrats want, and have been run so poorly for 70 years. Are probably going to struggle when it comes to housing, and there's going to be some beneficiaries that are next door to them. And I'm a little perplexed on why we're not doing better that way because of the mortgage rate being so low. It's still not attracting a ton of hot inflation to those houses, but I think there's more problems in just cheap money for housing, like local politics. The local politics is what I wanted to get to because you're talking about populous states that have a disproportionate impact on the housing market. And so,
banana republics like Connecticut and Illinois and New Jersey and New York and California, where the flip side is, then again, this data, middle of the country markets that saw the largest increases in asking prices, Kokomo, Indiana, and Columbus, Indiana, up 43% and 32% respectively. So you can have a cratering going on in places like Chicago and Chicagoland and in some of the other states I mentioned, and you're having a housing boomlet that you would expect given low interest rates in places like small town Indiana.
Yeah, and that's yes, and that will continue to be the case. And I'm, in the bigger picture, I think it's going to be interesting because obviously we know why they want to get rid of the Electoral College, right? Because they do want New York and L.A. to decide the president. But if the politics and the wealth destruction continues to go down the road that it's going to go down, this is now, I think, a near certainty. What's going to happen when those big states suddenly switch to, conservative? And all they've done is, gotten those electoral votes to be the most important thing for them when, hey, in 10 years' time, you might see California and New York decimated because of their earlier politics and policies. And all of a sudden, those places might be conservative. And this is going to blow up in their faces. I mean, they have to be very, very careful because there's a very clear history and path about how the left has run the biggest states and cities in the country, and how poorly they are in when it comes to finances and what that might do to people fleeing.
Also, we got to worry about Democrats taking control of the Senate, Democrats winning the White House, because you have Democrats like Ron Wyden, senator from Oregon, who proposed this week, which has been proposed before, but it seems a little bit more serious when you've got one chamber controlled by Democrats. That is, of course, taxing unrealized capital gains. And what would that do to investment in our economy and that
it would shut it down.
Growth engine? Yeah,
it would shut it down. I mean, that is it's what's scary is that people take this seriously, right? That's something that AOC should have come up with, not this guy, right? I can't. What bothers me is that these things are taken seriously. It's an absolutely disastrous, path to go down, and it shows a clear misunderstanding of finances and investing, and they don't know what they're talking about. And I get worried that it's even an idea. That's what bothers me. Like, it's even an idea to get rid of airlines and flying airplanes. That it's even an idea. So where are we going to go? Where does this end? I mean, we have a generation of 2 generations, 3 generations of kids that have gotten participation trophies, so they've gotten something for nothing, and they continually still want something for nothing. We've taken away their desire, the fire in their belly, because they've always gotten a trophy. They've always gotten the grade. And if they didn't get it, their parents bought it for them anyway.
Yeah, right.
Right. So where are we going with all of this? I mean, we're on a very, very dangerous trajectory because the very fact that guy can come up with that policy is shocking to me, and it's scary. But nobody else thinks it like that. I mean, because it doesn't matter, right? The 1% of taxpayers, the upper 1% of taxpayers out there, I did a show yesterday, they pay 37.3% of tax. Go back to those people. What is their fair share, right? What is the fair share of the 1%? Should they pay 42% of all the tax?
Well, right.
I mean,
give me the number.
Going with this?
Well, but also, too, I mean, this is the whole fallacy of the 1% versus the 99%, right? This false binary. Only the 1% have unrealized capital gains. Only the 1% have stock portfolios. Only the 1% have retirement accounts. Only the 1% have a home that they're trying to extract some value from.
I mean, you're exactly right. And then, so that we should be very scared that that's even an idea. We should be very nervous that that's even something that's been thought of and taken seriously because, I mean, it's hard to get a dumber idea. But I'm sure they'll come up with one.
Yeah, well, don't challenge them. Scott Shellady, Fox Business contributor, Scott the Cow Guy. Thanks as always for joining us, Scott.
All right, have a good weekend.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer.